I love doing challenges in Super Mario 3D World, and I had a lot of fun doing my no clear pipe challenge. After finishing that challenge, I thought of a new one. It's called the Pacifist Challenge. The goal is to beat Super Mario 3D World without killing any enemies. You may be thinking, isn't the whole point of beating the game to defeat Bowser and the bosses in each castle? Well, yes, but here's the thing. Mario feels bad for Bowser's minions. They're only following orders, so instead of defeating them, Mario only wants to defeat Bowser and the bosses. So here are the rules. We must try to defeat Bowser. We are only allowed to beat bosses in castles and blockades. Someone could say, wait, most of the blockades are enemies that appear in the levels, like Charging Chucks, Boulders, Fire Bros, and Magikoopas. Well, you are correct, but I view the blockade bosses as, well, bosses. It's a boss fight. So for this challenge, I view them as a boss rather than a minion. We cannot jump on or use any power-ups to kill any enemies in any level, so we must avoid any enemies like Goombas, Koopas, Piranha Plants, and so on. Okay, now that the long list of rules is out of the way, let's get started. Starting off with World 1. 1-1 is of course super easy. The only part that I had to be careful about is this section, since there's a horde of Goombas. 1-2 is a little difficult because of how narrow it is, and how many enemies are in this tight cave. Just make sure not to hit the Koopas and Goombas and you'll be fine. You can pop this bubble and get the star without hurting the Goombas too, which is nice. I am allowed to kill the Charging Chuck since it's a blockade, so I can move on to 1-3. This level was going well. I was avoiding the Goombas until this section. You're supposed to kill this giant Piranha Plant so a warp block appears, but we can't do that. So this level is unbeatable. 3 levels in and we already lost. Or did we? Actually, 1-2 contains a secret warp pipe. It warps us all the way to World 2. So let's use that and skip the rest of World 1. Alright, now time for World 2. 2-1 was really open, so it was super easy to stay far away from the enemies. Right now I can't even get enough stars to unlock 2-2, so I have to move on to 2-3. In 2-3 you're supposed to use the potted Piranha Plant during this level. It eats all the enemies, which counts as Mario killing them, so we can't use the Piranha Plant. Without using it, this level is still beatable without hurting any enemy. 2-4 was kind of a challenge. The skip squeaks kept getting in the way on the rolling hills. The second green star is in this color panel section. As long as you're careful about not hurting the Goombas, you can get the star. The Goombas will vanish once the star appears, but we don't harm them, so it's okay for the challenge. The Galoomba blockade was easy, so now on to 2-5. I mainly had to make sure I didn't run into any of the Galoombas. After entering the pipe, I had to jump over all the block steppers. The rest of the level was easy until this part. In order to get to the goal pole, you have to kill this Fire Bro, which causes a pipe to spawn. And we're not allowed to harm him, so unfortunately, we can't continue this level. Well, our challenge is already over. It is not possible to beat Super Mario 3D World without harming Bowser's minions. Well, I don't want to give up on this challenge already, so let's see how many levels are possible without harming any enemies. Let's head back to World 1. 1-4 is a Plessy level. You have to make sure you don't swim into the Splounders, because if you do, it'll harm them. Dodging them is possible, meaning 1-4 is beatable. 1-5 has these panels, and you have to press all of them to move on to the next section. Once you press all the panels, all the enemies in the section vanish. Technically I didn't harm them, so we're still okay for this challenge. Also, the Sting Bees in this level are kind of annoying, but they are possible to avoid. In 1-Castle, I had to make sure I didn't accidentally kick a soccer ball into the Goombas. For this star, I let the Goombas run into the soccer balls, so technically I didn't kill them. At the end of the level, we were able to defeat Bowser and finish World 1. Now let's see how we do on the rest of World 2. Back to 2-3. It was a little tricky because of the mini Goombas. They were sort of a pain to deal with, but I managed to beat the level without hurting any of them. For the second star, just make sure not to hit any of the Galoombas when invincible. In 2-Tank, I had to jump over a few block steppers, but it was easy. I would recommend not getting a cannon head, because you'll easily accidentally hit an enemy that way. You're able to get the star by simply walking into it. The Fire Piranhas will actually kill each other, so you don't have to worry about that. Defeating Boom Boom was of course not a challenge, and so now we can move on to World 3. 3-1 has a few snow pokies and bitty buds that can be avoided. Later in the level there are Goombas that are ice skating. You are able to pass them without hurting them, but sadly you won't be able to ice skate with them. 3-2 also had a few bitty buds in the beginning. During the later part of this level, it was actually quite difficult to get past these bitty buds without jumping on them. The auto-scroll, moving enemies, and moving chain fences make it hard, but it still is possible. 3-3 is a Boo Mansion, which obviously only contains boos. And luckily you can't kill boos. Well, you can with a Starman, but there isn't one in this level, so we can easily complete 3-3. Moving on to 3-4, it's super short, but there are quite a lot of enemies. But as you can see, it is possible to dodge all of them and complete the level. If you plan to get the third green star in this level, just make sure you move to the right so you don't run into any of the Goombas when you're invincible. The Magikoopa blockade was no sweat at all. 3-5 starts off with some Goombas relaxing in the water. Peacefully avoid them and you'll be put in a few underwater sections. The water sections have Cheep Cheeps and Porcupuffers. They can be swim around, but make sure you're quick so you don't hit any of them. And now we can move on to 3-6. This level is full of speed boosts and enemies, so be careful. I recommend standing at the very edge of the speed boost so you don't accidentally hit any of the Biddy Buds. During the slide sections, make sure to avoid the Biddy Buds and the level can be beaten. 3-7 has lots of Fizzlets and Sting Bees. It's a little tricky trying not to stomp on any of them, but other than that, it's still possible. 3-Train has a lot going on. Bullet Bills are exploding, but that doesn't count as me hurting them. In the next section, there's a ton of Bonsai Bills. Make sure you're completely out of the way because your character will jump on them and accidentally defeat them. At the end, there are a few Fire Bros guarding the pipe. Wait for them to jump off the pipe, then quickly enter and defeat Pom Pom. Well, World 3 was actually possible without defeating any minions. So let's see how World 4 goes. But before we can go to World 4, we have to defeat Histocrat. This is considered a boss, so we were able to defeat him without messing up the challenge. 4-1 is packed with ant troopers. In the first section, you can simply climb up the wall and avoid all of them. In the cave section, you can slowly wait to walk under them. During this spiky helmet section, you have to just time your jumps. Now in this section, you have to jump on the giant ant troopers. I don't consider this hurting the enemy because it doesn't defeat the ant trooper, and honestly, they don't seem to mind that we're bouncing on them. Anyways, at the end of the level when you grab the gold pole, 2 ant troopers will disappear, but like I said, that doesn't count as us defeating them. 4-2 is already up to a bad start. Avoiding the giant moving piranha plants isn't the issue. It's this sleeping piranha that's blocking the pipe. There's no way to get around it, so we have to kill one piranha plant to continue the level. Entering the pipe leads you to another sleeping piranha plant that's blocking your path. Luckily you can just get hurt by the plant and walk through it rather than hurting it. After that, you've got to move quickly. There's piranha plants moving all over the place, and you'll accidentally hit one of them if you're not careful. Besides the plant blocking the path, the rest of the level is actually possible. At the end of the level, make sure you jump over the sleeping piranha plant. The Brawler fight was of course super easy, just like all the other ones. 4-3 only has about a dozen Boomerang Bros throughout the whole level, so it was super easy not to hurt them. 4-4 has Spinies, Biddy Buds, and Hop Chops that need to be avoided. The hardest part of this level was the Biddy Bud Mushroom Trampoline section. With a Tanuki suit, it's way less stressful trying not to hit them. 4-5 was a little annoying since I couldn't defeat the spikes, which were constantly an annoying obstacle. But then again, it didn't stop me from beating the level. 4-Castle's first star isn't possible, because you need to stomp on a Brawler and use its carcass as a paperweight for this switch. But if you have a Tanuki suit, you can simply jump to the star. The second star definitely isn't possible, because it involves the switches that have to be pushed down by the Brawlers. The boss fight is easy, and even though it has the Brawler enemies, they are considered boss enemies and not minions, so it's okay for this challenge. 5-1 is actually boring because you have to avoid all the enemies. Make sure you lure the charging chucks away from the key token. And during the Plessy section, avoid the Flounders. And at the gold pole, don't go near the Biddy Buds or Koopa. The only part about 5-2 that was worth mentioning was this section. Normally you could stomp all of them as a giant Mario, but for this challenge, you just have to simply avoid them. 5-3 has a total of 4 enemies that barely get in your way, so of course this level was no challenge at all. Another Charge and Chuck blockade was blocking my path, but just like all the other blockades, this one was super easy. 5-4 consisted of these ant troopers that would spawn infinitely, but they weren't hard to dodge. The rest of the level was so wide and spacious that every enemy was avoided with ease. 5-5 was full of Bob-Ombs. They did explode on their own, which doesn't count as me hurting them. I count the bombs sitting there as Bob-Omb's lifeless corpse, so I wasn't allowed to pick those up and throw them. The rest of the level was easy as long as I was careful. 5-6 mainly had a few Goombas and lots of piranha plants. The flipping tiles made it easier to dodge the plants since they were mainly on the opposite side of the tiles. 5-7 was full of Bullet Bills and Hop Chops. I found this level super easy if you quickly run to the end. It makes avoiding the Bullet Bills much easier. The only enemy in 5-Castle was a couple of Charging Chucks. They were way too slow to even get my way, so getting to the boss fight was more than easy. We completed World 5 without harming any of Bowser's minions. So let's hope World 6 goes the same. 6-1 had a few piranha plants, nothing too amazing. During the second star, make sure not to pick up the potted piranha plant. And during the slide section, make sure you go to the far right or far left to avoid the piranha plants. 6-2 had a ton of bullies. Make sure not to hit the bullies in the first section. I was almost at the end when I ran into a dead end. Where am I even supposed to go? Oh no. Don't tell me I have to hit these bullies to make a warp block appear. Yup, that's exactly what I have to do. I thought this level actually wasn't possible, until a bully ran into me and fell into the pit itself. Now some of you may consider this cheating by saying I'm hurting the bully, but technically the bully's bouncing off of me and coincidentally falling into the pit. So what do you all think? Does this not count? Well, whatever, I'm counting it as a passing level. 6-3 had a ton of narrow hallways filled with Goombas. They're possible to dodge, but the third star sadly isn't possible. 6-4 is easy if you stay towards the top, because you avoid almost every enemy that way. The Prince Bully blockade was quick and simple, which lets us move on to 6-5. The only challenge in this level was this part. You may accidentally stomp on a Goomba, but the only other enemies are these two, which you can't even kill. 6-6 is nothing special, just a lot of bullet bills that can be spared if you're careful. 6-7 is a fast auto-scroller. There's not too many enemies, so focus mainly on not dying and this level is possible. The only hard part in 6-tank was this, only because there's so many enemies and you're not allowed to kill any of them. So you just have to wait for the slow auto-scroll to let you move forward. Other than that, we can easily defeat Boom Boom and move on to World Castle. But before we do that, we have to defeat the mini-boss Motley. Of course it wasn't hard, so now on to World Castle. Castle-1 wasn't bad until this Fire Bro. You're supposed to kill him for Warp Block to spawn. Of course, it's always the Fire Bros that are messing up this challenge. But wait, I can see the rest of the level in the background, so maybe with a Tanuki suit and a higher jump we can make it. Yes, Luigi actually can make the jump. Moving forward in this level, it's not that bad until we reach this section, which has another Fire Bro that has to be killed. But luckily, Luigi can jump to the other side. This level is somehow possible. Castle-2's main obstacle were these Spinies. If you get a Fire Flower, be careful not to accidentally shoot a Fireball, because it will bounce around and definitely hit a Spiny. Castle-3 legit has no enemies, so as long as you don't fall off the edge, this level is super easy. The only hard part in Castle-4 is this end section, where you have to kill all the bullies for platforms to spawn. But instead of doing that, you can simply Tanuki jump as Luigi. Dang, Luigi has been a lifesaver so far in this challenge. The second Brawler blockade was actually sorta hard, but the second Prince Bully fight was pretty much as easy as the first one. In Castle-5, the first section is easy because you can just climb up the side avoiding all the minions. But the second section was a challenge. So first, you have to climb to the very top of the tower while avoiding Fizzlets. Not too hard, except it's in such a narrow building that your jumps have to be so precise or you'll hit them. Then, after collecting all the keys, you have to sprint down to the bottom before the smoke gets you. Going up, you could take your time, but coming down, you have to go as fast as you can without hurting any of the Fizzlets. It took me a few tries, but it actually is possible to beat. This level was really fun though. Castle-6 is full of rammer heads, which are enemies you can't even harm. So the only enemies you have to be careful about not harming are in this section. The level does have bloopers, but just make sure you don't throw a fireball and you should be fine. The only enemies you can truly harm in Castle-7 are dry bones, so make sure to avoid them. And also make sure not to hit the splorches with a boomerang because I consider that hurting them. Time for Castle-Castle. For the first main section, make sure to quickly pass all the boomerang bros. When opening the gate, make sure not to hit any of the floppers with the soccer balls. Avoid the fire bros and you will have made it out of the first section. For this section, Tanuki Luigi once again saves the day. Instead of killing the Hammer Bros, we can simply jump to the other side and defeat Bowser. Now, onto the final world, World Bowser. Let's see how we do. Bowser-1 has a few Fire Bros and plenty of dry bones, but none of these minions stop us from completing the level. Bowser-2 may be possible, but I've tried it multiple times. I just can't get around this group of Splounders without killing at least one. But it doesn't matter, because the level is on a split path, so we can just try Bowser 3 instead. I don't know why, but I was struggling with this level. The gears full of piranha plants was giving me a hard time. During this section, I found it easiest if you run through it as fast as you can. Even though I struggled, it is beatable. Bowser-Train has a variety of enemies. First, you gotta dodge a few Skip Squeaks, Goombas, and Conkedors. Then, you gotta quickly avoid bullies, a horde of ant troopers, and mini Goombas with their mom blocking the exit door. Then at the end, you gotta wait for the Hammer Bro to get off the pipe, so you can finally kill Pom Pom for hopefully the last time. The most difficult part in Bowser-4 is this dry bones section. It took me at least 10 tries to get past this without hitting any of the dry bones. It's so annoying to do, but it luckily is possible, and so is the rest of the level. The only part in Bowser-5 that didn't seem possible was this Plessy section. There's a ton of mad poles in the way, but if you stay to the far right, you can dodge every single one and complete the level. For Bowser-6, definitely do not pick up a light box. These are the Boo's main weakness, and you'll definitely murder a ton of them if you pick this item up. In the later section, you're normally allowed to hit the POW blocks to stun the dry bones, but that counts as hurting them. So for this challenge, quickly get the Tanuki suit and jump to the other side. The swarm of dry bones can be difficult to dodge if you take too long. This last section that has a row of Peepas and a group of dry bones is so irritating. I recommend going as Peach with a Tanuki suit. You're on such a small platform that constantly spins, so you have to move back and forth because of the dry bones following you, while jumping over the Peepas. It's honestly quite hard, but it somehow is actually possible. Bowser-7 has a few different enemies. Just focus mainly on not falling off the blocks and you should easily avoid all the enemies throughout the entire level. The second Motley and second Histocrat fight of course were no challenge at all, which means we can finally attempt the final level, Bowser-Castle. Leading up to the Bowser fight, there's a few Fire Bros, Bullies, and Cat Goombas you have to make sure you don't hit. During the entire Bowser fight, the only two minions are these two Cat Goombas. They must be pretty important to Bowser to be in this section, but still, we must not harm them. After letting them be, we can climb the tower and hit Meowser into the sky, beating the final level and finishing the game. So, sadly, it is not possible to beat Super Mario 3D World without harming any of Bowser's minions. To beat this game, you have to kill two innocent enemies. Well, somewhat innocent. I had a lot of fun making this challenge video. What do you all want to see me attempt next? Let me know down in the comments. Anyways, I'm a Nintendo fan, and thank you so much for watching.